I don't think about the word plucky very often. Most characters in games don't really exhibit pluckiness in a way that you would notice. Events happen around them. They carry what happens forward, and it sits with them. It builds up, and over time, it starts to define who they are. That idea became the starting problem for this script. After looking at characters like Vivi, who is just existential uncertainty made manifest, Vincent's lack of humanity, and Micah's corrosive influence on everyone around him, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to find something lighter, something that didn't just fold back in on itself and collapse. But even when I tried to move away from that pattern of angst and heavy thoughts, I kept running into the same structure again and again. Even characters that weren't inherently in crisis were being shaped by the crisis in the world around them. Even when the outcome was growth instead of breakdown, this negativity still existed, so I started to look somewhere else. I started to look not through my games, but through my family's games, through things that I hadn't personally built meaning around. And that's when I found Spyro. There's something about how Spyro moves through his problems that feels unusually clean. He reacts when things happen. He gets excited, he gets frustrated, but none of it seems to stay behind once the moment's over. The world pushes him on, and he responds in real time, but there's no visible after. No lingering emotional trace reshaping what comes next. He's just plucky. Just like the residents of Avalar summoning something they didn't fully understand, I ended up looking at a character who I wasn't initially looking for, but who fit the gap better than anything I had already considered. Spyro doesn't treat experience as something to be absorbed into identity. It passes through him in real time, it gets responded to, and then it just stays where it happened. He still feels things, there's reaction, there's tone, there's momentum in how he moves through situations, but once the situation is over, it doesn't echo forward in any way that changes his direction. That becomes clearest in Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage. Spyro is pulled from a sort of vacation state and dropped into Avalar, where he's mistaken for a summoned savior meant to deal with Ripto, a disruptive sorcerer destabilizing the region. On paper, this should create internal conflict. It's a mismatch, a situation where identity becomes uncertain, where expectations might force reflection, but Spyro just doesn't enter that loop. He doesn't sit with the idea that he's the wrong dragon for the job. He doesn't reorganize around expectations of others, he simply proceeds. Ripto functions as a problem in the environment, not a psychological counterweight. He disrupts the world, but he doesn't become something that Spyro has to carry forward with him internally. The same applies to the figures around him, the Professor, Allura, Hunter, who try to frame Spyro as something larger than he is, a solution, a chosen force, a corrective presence. But Spyro doesn't take that framing in. It stays outside of him while he just continues to move forward. And at this point, a familiar assumption appears. Most hero narratives depend on change. The idea that what you go through reshapes who you are, that experience leaves something behind to redefine you. And from that angle, Spyro looks incomplete, like a character missing the internal arc that normally gives action meaning. But that assumption depends on a very specific requirement. That meaning has to come from internal revision. Spyro suggests a different structure. He doesn't avoid emotion, he just doesn't turn emotional response into something that he carries forward and lets reshape him. A moment is real, the reaction is real, but it doesn't stay behind once it passes. Across his journey, what changes is not who he is, but how he moves through what is in front of him. Early tasks are simple. Later tasks become more complex. His responses become faster, more precise, and more efficient, but at no point does that refinement require him to become someone else. He doesn't rewrite himself to meet the world. He becomes better at acting within it. So progression exists, but it shows up in clarity of action rather than in internal change. Meaning is still produced, problems are still resolved, but those outcomes are completed rather than carried. And that changes what Spyro is doing inside his own narrative. He's not a character who becomes new through experience. He doesn't get reborn. He's a stable point of action that doesn't let experience define him after it ends. On the surface, Spyro is simple. Bright colors, direct goals, clear progression. It reads like something designed for younger players, something immediately legible, something you don't have to decode, and in a sense it is. A younger player doesn't necessarily expect experience to define who they are. A moment is a moment. A failure resets. A success resolves immediately. Spyro fits that rhythm naturally. But what's interesting is that this doesn't make it shallow when seen from further away. The simplicity holds. It doesn't collapse into something thinner when you look at it again later. It doesn't become just for kids in a dismissive sense, nor does it turn into something artificially deep through reinterpretation. It stays the same across both readings, and that stability is part of what makes it hard to place cleanly. There's also a personal distance for me that makes this easier to see. I didn't grow up with Spyro. I didn't build that familiarity early on. I know him through other people, through my wife, through my kids, through watching them move through his world. That place already exists outside of me. I'm not disconnected, I'm just not entangled in the same loop of meaning making. And from that position, Spyro is easier to observe structurally. He acts, the world responds, the moment ends. No emotional weights carried forward, just continuation. And that's what makes him unusual in a different way from most characters that we tend to focus on, not because he's simple, but because he doesn't let experience define him while he's still able to fully participate in it. The world moves, Spyro responds. Spyro moves, the world responds, and then both continue. I hope you liked this video. I had a hard time finding a character. It was either Spyro or Garrus, but Garrus goes back up to the world is shaping him. Spyro, though, he's clearly designed by a committee, but instead of getting a Poochie, we received something quietly rare, a character who can engage with the world and still keep moving without carrying all of that with him. Anyway, as always, I might not know you, but I love you. Take care.